the Bullet came out, a little bit of an excuse factory. Did you guys catch this? She was with my old cohort, Ariel Helwani. They got a great thing going there. They got a real good relationship. I feel like Ariel can get the Bullet when he wants her. I feel like she's comfortable with Ariel. I just maintain for you that the Bullet is a villain. And I feel as though that is a massive plot twist that nobody saw coming. I feel as though if somebody is going to go bad guy, after they're already a well-established good guy, that's when you're going to get your biggest pop. You don't get it your first day on the job. You just sign a contract, you break in, you establish, I'm here, I'm there, I want the cheers, I want the booze. It's not like that. It takes a whole bunch of work. And once you have one and then you pull the rug, it's massive. I mean, really, it's a very big deal. And I feel as though she's a bad guy, but just really does not want to embrace it. Look, if you ever want the same thing in life, the general theory is continue to do the same thing. And if you would like something different, whatever the scenario, you're going to have to do something different. I think that we can all drink to that logically. Okay. The Bullet wants a rematch with Grasso. Badly. We didn't want them to fight the first time. And when I make a statement like that, I always have to hear from you bullet marks in the comment section about how much you loved it and how your opinion isn't the same as mine. You know what? You don't get to do that when the fight happened and it was a co-main event for a world championship. You just don't get to do it. That's where you have to stand back and concede to me. Yeah, Chael got it right. I mean, yeah, I know. World championship and #1 contender and was certainly billed and promoted and given every opportunity, but it could not headline a card. It didn't headline a card. And I bring that to you because she would really like the rematch. It would seem as though she's deserving. I can't remember somebody. I haven't looked this up, but just off the top of my head, it feels as though Shevchenko is one of the most successful champions that we've ever had. I want to put her at #1. I remember Anderson had 12 in a row, and they made a big fuss about this. But she is one of the most successful champions that we ever had. It would seem as though if she lost, she would default down to a #1 contendership for her own championship. I believe on the judges' scorecards, she was winning that match before she was submitted. So I have absolutely no knock to her. And I do think that there's an integrity and there's a fairness. And why I won't go as far as to say it should be stowed upon her. I would certainly understand if the rematch was booked. Now, when you take into consideration what I just said, that the way that you went about that last fight that people didn't want to see, that last fight, there was a world title fight that didn't headline the show. You're going to have to come about this one a little bit different, particularly if you really want it. The Bullet goes on Ariel's show, and she started making excuses, and this even tied into the referee, Jason Herzog, who had brought them up. There was a position earlier in the fight where he brought them back up to their feet for inactivity. And she thought in that situation she was doing enough to stay there, have an opportunity to settle in or even advance. I don't disagree with her. That's a referee's decision. What I'm sharing for you is it's an excuse, and you're blaming somebody else. And that's life, and we all do it. But when we do that in the world of sport, we are now a bad guy. There's only a few things that bad guys can do. In the olden day, it used to be very easy to establish yourself because there was a whole bunch of rules. There's a whole bunch of, so all you had to do was break one of them. And now the audience knows. When you don't have a whole bunch of rules, okay, great. You got to go out and you tell a lie. And if you can't tell a lie because people don't know what the story and the truth is anyway, you can go out and use profanity, right? I mean, like, there's things that you could do, but there's only so many things that you could do. When you go into excuse making, instead of tipping your hat, you're turning to Grasso, who has one of the great victories and one of the great upsets in the history of the sport. Now, I realize it's not being celebrated, but it's not being celebrated because nobody watched the fight. Nobody watched the fight because it wasn't a feature match. But when she has that, I mean, Ariel Helwani himself, who hosted this interview, went on record right after the fight saying, don't do an immediate rematch. And Ariel had a very interesting argument that I've never heard before, and it stayed with me. I thought about it. And what Ariel said is, if you rematch them and the bullet wins, when you look back historically, it'll be as though Grasso never had the victory. If you go and you immediately rematch them and the bullet wins, the bullet will move on and Grasso will not. And when you look back, you'll have forgotten that it even happened. Interesting point. I don't think that affects the rankings. I don't think matchmaking is done with that in mind. But I don't know that Ariel's wrong either. And it does seem like for a level of sportsmanship, which is an ingredient that we would put into matchmaking, perhaps we need to look in a different direction. But the bullet came out as she blamed the referee. There was a previous fight. The bullet won it, and she blamed a poor performance on jet lag. I believe she went over to Singapore. She won. If you win a fight, as much as you can't have an excuse when you lose, if you in fact are, it's exponential if you win. If you win, you cannot then come tell the audience why your performance was bad. It is a terrible thing to do, but she did it. I believe at her core, you have a bad girl here. I think it just needs to be embraced. And I'm not putting her down when I say that, by the way. I think from an entertainment aspect, it would be wildly helpful. I just don't know that it's a stretch or that it would be a performance. I feel as though it's right here in front of us. I mean, I could go one interview to the next, to the next, to the next. I could just keep going down them, and I'm standing back and I'm looking and going, that's not what the good person says. That's what the villain says. That's not what the good guy does. That's what the villain does. So I feel as though it's right here. It just is pronounced. No more apologies. No more saying sorry. No more. I mean, what is the point of going on Ariel's show and going, well, Ariel's, I look back at that fight. I was in a situation. I was on the ground and I was making some advancements, and certainly throughout my time viewing the sport, I've never seen anybody in that type of a situation with that kind of activity being brought back up to their feet. What's the difference in saying that or saying, hey, Helwani, how about we back up 2 rounds to when that prick Herzog stands us up? What is he trying to take her on a date or something? Why does he got to bring us up? I'm not in a closed guard out there. I'm out there pummeling her. She's huffing and puffing. As a matter of fact, I got side control and I'm getting ready to set up an arm bar. Somebody comes in and brings us up. I gotta literally let her arm go. I was just about to pull my knee up, pull this thing back, hyperextend it. We're all gonna be heading to the bar. What's the difference? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. She's blaming a referee's decision for something that happened earlier on in the fight that changed the outcome. What difference does it make? One's interesting. One's fun to listen to. One will get people to stick around and stay there and come back tomorrow. One you can make headlines off of. And you can parlay. The other you cannot. And if you're in a situation where you really want a rematch, it would seem as though no one's in a hurry to rematch a fight that we didn't want to see in the first place. I mean, it would just seem as though. It's your career. Do what you want with it. But it's really important to be aware at all times of where you're at. Really important to understand when you're at a press conference and those questions start coming in and you got the belt and you got the cornrows and you're sitting up there with a smile and you get 3 questions when a coke addict with no belt got 13 questions. I mean, if you're not keeping track of that stuff, if you're not seeing that as a problem, if you're not seeing that this is a competition, it's a very interesting spot. And not for nothing, I can't just give Grasso a pass. If Grasso wants to rematch the bullet, okay, great. Go ahead and do what you're doing, which is absolutely nothing. If she looks at the bullet and goes, that's a really hard opponent, whew, I got past it there in the rear view. I want to go do something else. Go out there and get something going. I mean, as much of a snooze fest as the bullet was, more than I got from Grasso.